15 minutes over? All right. Well then,
Ruby, are you waiting on Heidi or no?
Heidi's not gonna be here.
I'm not coming. Where are my agenda items? I had them, but I was done.
10 seconds, you ready?
10 seconds, I'm ready. Just looking for my agenda.
Ruby, Brian, you ready?
Hey, Lisa.
Okay, we're live.
Spoke on your behalf.
Are we live? Deanne, we're ready to go? Okay. Welcome. The Finance Committee calls this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. on 1/9/25.
Select board meeting called to order, same time.
School committee called to order at 6:30 p.m.
So I'd like to welcome everyone here at the table for joining our meeting, as well as all of the guests in the room. Tonight, we're going to start with the review, discussion, and vote by the Finance Committee on the request for a transfer from the Finance Committee, the reserve fund the Finance Committee has control over. It's dated December 24th, and I'm going to read it out loud. Jill, what's this now?
That's how much is in the line item.
Currently. So it's this plus this equals the total repair?
No.
Total
The
repairs.
total repair is the amount being requested.
And to leave that amount in the line item?
Yes.
Okay. So the transfer, request for transfer from the reserve fund, it's addressed to the Finance Committee, Town of Belchertown, dated December 24th, 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, request is hereby made for the following transfer from the reserve fund in accordance with Chapter 40, Section 6 of the Massachusetts General Laws. The amount being requested is $37,063.03. It's to be transferred to the Fire Department Vehicle Maintenance line item number 102220-54811. Present balance in said appropriation is $6,600. I'm gonna add that to this. Second, make sure it's on both of them. Okay. The amount requested will be used for the CL diesel quote as attached, quote estimate number RO5139. And this quote, who I believe all members have received in advance with the agenda, is for some repairs to fire engine truck number 2. Has everyone on the Finance Committee had an opportunity to look at the quote? So the expenditure is extraordinary and unforeseen for the following reasons. It's an unforeseen engine failure due to metal shavings and contaminants in fuel systems per CL diesel quote RO5139. It is signed by the fire chief. And so, are there any discussions with the Finance Committee?
Just to question it, I know it's over $10,000, it doesn't have to go out to bid or anything like that, just so the townspeople know.
Yeah, it's what would be considered an emergency repair for public safety. So we currently have a engine borrowed from the town of Amherst. So we're trying to get that back to them, so we're working to get this done right away.
Gotcha. The next question is, the posted date, this engine went in on 9/11 according to the sheet that was provided. And then the posted date that we got the repair back was 11/15, and then we have a December 24th date. I guess we chose to use emergency funds, there was ARPA funds available at the time, and we just chose to do it this way instead. I'm just trying to understand the process of why the
Yes.
timeline went this way like this.
Correct.
So these funds will be returned to the ARPA fund account?
No.
No?
So we chose reserve funds over ARPA funds,
Yes.
and that was select board's decision, I guess, or?
I guess so. Yep.
So they voted, the select board voted on that?
Yes.
We did.
It just seems like a bad timeline. I guess we're getting this on the 24th, and there was a lot of time in between to figure out other things.
The purpose of the reserve fund is for emergency repairs, and that's why that was targeted. That's why we have the reserve fund.
And how much funding is left in the ARPA?
I think we started with, ARPA there's no funds left unobligated.
Okay,
All funding had to be obligated by
right,
the end of 2024. The reserve fund started with a balance of 155,000. This is the first request to come out of it.
okay.
So there'll still be over 100,000 in our emergency reserve fund.
So to avoid some of these questions in the future, Jill, I know you say it's very restrictive to be able to spend money out of the reserve fund. There's certain criteria that must be met. There's, all this stuff. Can you email me that specific criteria that I can share with the board, so that way we have a understanding of what we can and can't approve, just so that we're,
Two of the words that describe it that are right at the top of my head are extraordinary or unforeseen.
no, I get it, but it's just that as we move forward, because there is still $100,000 available, I think it would be good for the board itself, the finance committee, to have that information of what is allowable, why it's allowable, like what you talk about, so that we can, we're all pretty solid financial professionals, so that we can understand it, so as it comes about, we have better knowledge of how we feel about it. Does that make sense? Okay, yeah, and if you email it to me, I will email it to everybody else. So is there any further discussion? Angela, Katie, you have anything? Mike, you have anything? Okay.
Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So five, transfers approved, so we're approving at $37,063.03. We need 2 copies. And so I need the 4 of you to initial, and I'll just pass this around so we can get that back to Jill. So if we can just initial these 2 copies and pass them around to the board.
Yeah, they can't get on.
Anywhere.
That's not good.
Anywhere, just initial it anywhere. Pardon? So now, then, while we're passing this around, the next up on the agenda, can people hear us? The owl?
They can't get on, so I don't know what link people are trying.
They should be on, the link that is on the,
Which link are we logged on to?
should be on the meeting agenda.
It's under the finance committee.
Right, so it's meeting number 230440125.
So I'm getting a couple
Two
texts
copies?
too.
Yeah.
People can't get on.
Oh, okay.
But it says they're waiting for you to start the meeting.
Yeah, 230-440-125.
No, we started the meeting, didn't we? We're recording it, we started it.
Who's the organizer?
Me, I am the organizer.
Because Kevin is the one who started it.
When I initially signed in, I was the organizer, so I don't know.
Yeah, I get the wrong ID.
Not you.
I don't know where that one came
So
from.
it's saying the meeting is organized
John.
by Lori, but Kevin is clearly the one listed as the one running this meeting, or gets logged on to this go to.
Well, I think he
So
said
Jill,
at
I
the
keep
meeting
wanting you to
that's
take
why-
one.
I understand, I'm just letting you know.
Thank you.
This is beyond my,
Kevin right
I'm not the AV person.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we're
let's
gonna
call
have to
Kevin.
Restart the vote too.
So can we just, pause the meeting?
Motion to
Or-
pause?
Motion seconded, pause at, paused at 6:38.
Kevin's,
Where is it?
saw Kevin pop up, so I don't know.
Oh, did you?
He might be slashed out then.
Boy, Lori's gonna have a whole bunch of emails.
I'm calling right now.
I get 300-400 emails a day, sometimes bring it
I
on.
think close the meeting and just have her sign it.
Delete.
Right, that's what I would do.
Hey, Kevin, it's Ed. We're trying to get the finance committee meeting up on this go-to meeting piece. Right outside under Lori. Any way you can help us fix it?
Yes, hang on one sec.
You're on speakerphone, by the way.
You have a whole room of people, no pressure.
I'm assuming that I said I organized the meeting, or I'm a co-organizer. If that's the case, I can start the meeting from my phone.
Yeah, your name is up there in the upper left corner.
Okay, so.
And it's meeting 230-440-125.
Okay, hang on one second. I gotta. Okay, we still got you, Ed?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can we keep going with your transfer stuff?
I just paused the meeting until he's got this up and running,
That's all we had, I think, for transfer.
and then we're going to you, but before you start about, he needs to be here in the
I think
future
we're gonna
though.
have to restart the meeting.
Fake.
230-440-125.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Did you create your own meeting room before?
nope. I signed into this meeting, which brought me to Kevin Hannon, like under myself for the finance committee.
ID is 746-6271.
The 230-440-125 is the meeting room we have every time.
Yeah, it's got a different meeting ID for some reason.
Oh yeah, I didn't type that in. That was not me. Hey, Lisa.
Okay, is it going now?
No, I don't see anybody else logging in, Kevin. Kevin, I think it's,
Do we have
it's
to log
coming
out
up
of our
under
existing one?
the wrong meeting ID.
Should we log out of this completely and re-log into a new meeting? Why don't we do that? So, Steve, can you turn it off? I can't get over there. Sorry. Thanks, Steve. My God, Lisa, just slam it shut and tell him to do without it. Just slam it shut. I have 3.
I'm gonna log out, log back in.
All right, hey, Kevin, Sue's gonna log out and log back in.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we did not.
It looks like I got the meeting going. There are 43 people.
Yeah, that's the one we wanna be in.
Yeah, that's where we need to be. So we're gonna have to start the meeting again. I'm gonna read the transfer again. We'll have to vote again. We don't need to sign. I'm sorry. Sorry. You look good, Angela.
Kevin, just stay on the line with us till we get.
Not like you look all like,
Oh, just say it's been a week, I'm surprised. It's been a week and I have no makeup on.
hey, you look nice and relaxed and like, Happy New Year. What?
Just hit start.
Someone told me that they're on, but it says that the voting room is
He's fixing it.
Just hit
Just
start.
letting you know.
You gotta hit start, Steve. Yeah, he's checking it's the right one. So I think when we were changing, yeah, no, it's the right one.
Start my session.
Start my session, record it.
Thank you, the meeting's on.
Interesting.
That's okay.
So do we need to unmute now?
Hold on.
Let's see if people can.
Record.
This conference will now be recorded.
Can you see up, go to talking, see who else is there? Or it's like, right, show it to everyone.
No, there's still only one person on. You can see it by the number, the little person.
Kevin, we're not having luck, bud.
You're joining 230-440-125.
Click the I button. Upper left. Yeah, one moment. Nope, we're back in the old meeting room. Some version.
Started another meeting somewhere else.
Steve, did you end this meeting? End this one? End this section, yeah.
guess we do too. See, I'm used to Zoom. Zoom. It's a sort of meeting.
I do.
I feel we should go around the table and start telling jokes.
Right.
Kevin, can you just turn us on, please?
Yeah, ask him if he can.
Kevin, can you, is there any way you can log in, or can you not do that on your phone?
I just texted you my sign on. Do you have your phone?
Tell him it's coming up as a Board of Health.
No, Belchertown Finance Committee. But Jill, I just texted you my log on.
You shouldn't even need to log in to go to meeting. You should be able to just type in the numbers and join the meeting. And I can make you
All right, well, now you can find out my go-to login. Now you can log in as me and go to anytime because I just texted you all my information.
We're not the organizer.
It doesn't matter. Turn the mic on. Turn the camera on.
52 people. Yeah, great.
Yeah, I think that's amazing that there's that much participation and people wanting to know. Well, we got to record it, Steve.
Let's record the meeting.
We got to record it.
I'm sorry?
It's not letting us hit the record button.
Oh, for God's sake.
Oh, she said, okay, it looks good now.
Right, but we can't record.
But we have to record it.
Do we have to on go through, or do we have BCTV?
Kevin's working on it.
Make or
We're now an organizer. There you go.
Nicole's trying to jump out the window. She's at it. So we are recording it? No, Steve, you can go back in and, is it being recorded? Okay. Hello, everyone. It is now 6:46. The Finance Committee is back in session. We are going to start over. The first item on the agenda was the request for a transfer from the reserve fund. It is made to the Finance Committee, as the Finance Committee has access to reserve funds. Can we put everybody on mute, please? How do you mute everybody? Okay. So, the Belchertown Finance Committee has $150,000 approximately of reserve funding that, we are able to, disperse appropriately for emergency, unexpected, unanticipated repairs throughout the year. So, on December 24th, ladies and gentlemen, request is hereby made for the following transfer from the reserve fund in accordance with Chapter 40, Section 6 of the Massachusetts General Laws. The amount requested is $37,063.03 to be transferred to the Fire Department Vehicle Maintenance line item 10220-5481. The present balance in said appropriation is $6,600. The
You gotta unmute this one.
You have to unmute Board of Health.
The expenditure is extraordinary and/or unforeseen for the following reasons. Unforeseen engine failure due to metal shavings and contaminants in fuel systems per CL diesel quote RO 5139. It is signed by the fire chief. Is there any discussion by the finance committee?
No.
So I, motion
to approve?
and
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we have on 1/9/24 voted 500 to transfer the approved in the sum of $37,063.03. The next item up on the agenda is to discuss the building tours, and I would like to start that by asking our town manager, Steve Williams, to please give us some thoughts to open the discussion.
Yes, thank you. And I want to thank everybody for their patience while we got this meeting going. As you can see, we had a little bit of a rocky start. And I also want to thank the school committee members and the finance committee and the select board for attending the building tours. I thought they were beneficial for me at least. I certainly got to see areas of the schools that I normally wouldn't access. They're not publicly accessible, so that was very helpful. Tours also highlighted the importance of us all working together to implement a functioning capital improvement plan. And as a side, we recently developed a capital improvement planning committee, and the chairperson is sitting here tonight, Eric Weiss. So I just want to introduce him. They've been meeting. They have been considering capital requests, including those from the schools. So we're moving forward with that. The tours also reaffirmed the need for me to work towards meeting the future needs of the town. Our town offices and departments are crowded. Activities, areas of responsibility, and our customer base is expanding. All the departments are seeing this growth, and we need to find ways to meet those needs for space. It's becoming apparent we don't have the funds to renovate areas. We certainly don't have the budget to support those new areas. So we really need to find ways, whether in our existing areas or other areas, that we can continue to stay in that space and make it fit. So in the future, I think I'll be looking at ways we can do that through either remote work arrangements, going to a paperless format so we can clear out some of our storage rooms. Right now, that's been a real problem. Those storage spaces could be used for office space in the future. And we need to be able to make sure that we have room for not only the existing staff to function, but the staff that's going to be necessary for the growth in the future. I also need to address the inventory of vacant buildings. We have a financial burden that comes with them. We need to get them back into the tax rolls so we can capitalize on that infrastructure. And we have a long list of buildings. We have 608 Berkshire Avenue, we have the former Franklin School, and right now we are in the middle of a feasibility study for what to do with the former Cadgel School. So rather than go on forever, because I'm sure I can about these tours, they're over 2 days, I'm going to turn it over to the chair of the select board to see if he has any comments, and if not, then
We'll start around the table.
start around the table. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great exercise for all three boards to just kind of walk around the buildings. It's the first time it's been done in over a decade, really, as far as I can tell. It just really brought to light that the Capital Improvement Committee, it was needed a long time ago, but I'm glad they're here now, and we can begin to at least identify, what some professionals have to say, what the order should be, and then the hard part is coming back before this group, which ones will get funded in the future, right? So, but it would be good to actually understand from a professional standpoint what needs the most attention the most now. So that's all I've got to say at this point.
I think I'm in agreement with Ed and Steve, and it is a long game, so changes are not going to be made rapidly or irresponsibly or, in haste to put a Band-Aid on something. The changes we make need to be long-term and meaningful, and it'll be a slow start to get things done one at a time effectively, and possibly it'll continually be a living type of change, because as we start moving along and making those changes, things might come up that, we should maybe do this, or, this might be a better fit for that. So I don't think it's anything that we could just create a list and bullet it out and follow it 1, 2, 3, because it is so many changes to so many departments, areas, buildings, school structures. It's just so much. It is important to prioritize what needs to be changed first, what we can do for the most bang for our efforts in first. But I do really feel that we all have to understand it's going to be years long of a process. It is nothing that is gonna happen in the next year or 2 or 3 that's gonna be from start to finish. It's gonna be a years-long ongoing process, a living process that's gonna be open to change. And so Katie, would you have anything, or start down the line?
I don't have anything to add to that, no.
Visiting visit, thank you.
I will say that there are no grant programs for town buildings. There are grant programs as we went through the process for school buildings. Unfortunately, the community decided not to fund that project, which would have eliminated 2 buildings that are failing, but we're moving past that. One of the other things I think that we can look at when we start to look at some of this is the best use of where departments are and how they can be like Tetrised out. Like, does this department need to be here, and does this department need to be there, and how all of the buildings can be utilized in the best use. So,
Yeah, I agree. I have nothing else to add.
Mindy?
My contribution would just
Wendy?
be... My contribution would just be that I think we know that it's important for us to think about the buildings also, not only for the quality of those who are being educated in the spaces, working in the spaces, and utilizing the spaces, but also are there revenue opportunities for us as well in these spaces. So seeing them not only as the best thing they can be, but how can it benefit the town long term.
Excellent, yep.
You can go. For me, it was a great opportunity. I haven't seen some of the buildings. I didn't realize there was a downstairs or an upstairs for the fire department or the police station. I think for me, in general, just town-wide, there's a lot of dead space for storage of papers, and I know we saw some empty classrooms when we were on our tour from layoffs last year. I just think we need to work as a town and not school versus town. It's easy for us to say, or someone to say, the school should do this, but if you don't have the stakeholders at the table, you really don't know what should be done or should not be done. Same with the town. It's not my place to say you should clean out all those spaces and put in offices, but there's a lot of dead space, in my opinion.
So I wasn't able to attend the town building tours, but I did go on the school building tours, and I really appreciated everybody's participation in that. I think, it was I don't really know what the takeaway was. I mean, on the school side, we expended quite a bit of energy and effort into the MSBA process and getting funding to try to address some buildings in town. So I would just like to know sort of what the takeaway is and how the school buildings fit within the larger plan as a town. And also, echo that we need to work together, and that means that needs to be part of the whole discussion and part of the whole plan.
Yeah, same thing. I was only able to attend the schools, but it was eye-opening coming from a person who really only gets to see the schools when they're picking up their kids. So getting an in-depth tour was really helpful. Like we said, Lori, prioritization is key. Focusing on what you said, the bang for the buck. I think that's going to be the most important part.
And the revenue that we could possibly generate on the town side.
Right. So, that's all I have.
Yeah, I mean, echoing off of the revenue, especially on the town tours, we saw a lot of empty spaces inside of senior center, rec department, veterans hall, where, we talked about it. Are we generating revenue here? Are we generating enough revenue? So I think that was huge. Kind of echoing off of what Brian and Ruby said, on both tours, I saw a lot of underutilized areas, records sitting in basements, things in disrepair, things that we saw that were in disrepair while on the tour that we weren't aware of. I think for me, and this is just me personally, what I want, so the Jabesh Brook tour for me was big. Understanding that there are just so many things that need repair. There's a 911 system that needs to be addressed. Windows, everything, the roof, everything. But for me, what I want to see is a town-wide feasibility study on the schools to see if we can first consolidate, possibly consider regionalization down the road, whatever it may be. But for me, first is consolidation and seeing if that's feasible amongst all the schools.
And so Lisa, did you get an opportunity?
It's my turn, okay. I'm writing down notes. I came away with two things. The first is a real positive. Given the climate that we find ourselves in, I was impressed with some of the departments who came up with creative ways to meet their funding requirements, whether it was the fire department in terms of utilizing the Votech school to build the bunkhouse, or to get the additional firefighters, the police, again, going after funding opportunities to pay for the cameras that they're now wearing and other programs. What I was struck by is that in difficult circumstances, there were departments that went above and beyond to stay, best of class by finding funding opportunities that got them there. The second thing I want to say is that the problems that we're all looking at were not created overnight. These were decades in the making. And I want to be mindful of that, because while I know there's a lot of feeling in this room, I think, as someone who just moved here 4 years ago, why weren't these discussions held 15 years ago? And yet here we are at the table with a very unhappy set of circumstances. I'd like to be, as I was in one iteration of my life, handing out money, looking at all the different arguments and saying, yes, here's how much for you, and how much for you, and how much for you. This town is not in that space, and we're not the only ones. There are towns all around the Commonwealth
And the
that are
country.
experiencing the same hardships. And so I want to caution us on the one hand, and at the same time say we're not unique. What can be unique about this conversation is how we as leaders and as community members look at this without pointing fingers, stay calm, and stay the course.
I think that was fabulous. Thank you, Lisa. Steve, you had given us this. Is this an opportunity to pass this out now, or should it be
Yeah, I
discussed
think
at a later?
The copies were passed.
Does everyone have a
Yeah.
copy
That
of
was really
this?
part of the budget.
Oh, okay, so we want to save this to the budget? That's fine,
That's fine.
because the budget's up next.
But I would like to echo what Lisa just said
Mhm.
and try to address, Ruby's question. I think the path forward today is to get everybody that needs to be at the table to work together cooperatively, come up with some solutions. And I think we're willing to do that. I know in my conversations with Superintendent Cameron, he's willing to sit down and start talking about the buildings. So if we can at least agree on something tonight, it would be let's move forward. Let's get to the table. I know we have select board members that are interested. We obviously have to worry about quorums, but we can start having some discussions. So if you're willing, we are.
Absolutely.
Great.
So the next item on the, and does anyone else have any questions, comments, or concerns at this table about the building tours? Are we ready to move on to the next item? So that
Sure.
FY26 budget, and again, I am going to throw it to our
Thank you.
town manager, Steve Williams, and Jill Pinto.
So before I turn this over to the town accountant, I just want to say that the FY26 budget process is proving to be difficult. As you will soon hear, we do not have enough revenue to fulfill the budget requests for the town or the schools. That's something we're struggling with as we speak. But I want to emphasize that it's early in this process. We don't have the governor's numbers on the first round budget. We'll have those towards the end of the month. They'll be released over the weekend of the 25th at a conference in Boston. Once we have those numbers, we'll have a little bit better of a picture on where we stand with things. We don't have the Pathfinder numbers. We don't know if they're going to stay the same or go up. Last year we saw a pretty significant increase. We're still looking at our revenues. We're hoping that maybe we can shake a little more out of that effort. We're usually pretty aggressive trying to find revenues. So we're going to do what we can. Today we locked on our fuel oil, our commodities, so our diesel, our heating oil, our gasoline for the town. I don't know if the schools have locked on heating oil yet for the schools, but we did lock. We did lock at a rate lower than last year, so we're going to be looking at building those savings back into the town budget.
What kind of rate did we get?
I don't have the numbers, it was too preliminary today, I didn't bring it. And at the same time, I've gone to all of the department heads on the town side and have asked for them to review their budgets, to try to find creative ways to reduce those budgets with as minimal impact as possible. And if they have to cut funding or personnel, what the impacts are going to be, so we can review those carefully. I think at this time, again, it's too early to panic. We still have a long road ahead of us. But the department heads were very understanding of the state of our budgets and the affairs that we're currently dealing with. They were very positive that we could get through this. But they also all stressed that this is not going to be without reductions in programs and services of some sort. So I think, that process is still ongoing. It's still too early to even comment on that. So what the purpose of tonight is to let everybody know where we stand as of today. It's not to really start trying to dig into line items and ask why, something was changed or increased. I guess, if there is those questions, we can do our best, but we're not quite prepared for that yet.
Oh, this is certainly the very first of our many meetings to come.
So what I would ask everybody is just to exercise a little bit of patience. We don't know what the full impact's gonna be, but what I will say is that the numbers that you're gonna hear tonight are pretty big. We are very far apart from what we have available to what was requested. And that's important. It's what we have available to what was requested. So I wanna stress that. So I'll turn it over to Jill.
And would we go over this before that, or when do we go over this?
Yeah, I'll go over that. Just give Jill another second to catch
Sorry,
her
Jill.
breath. So I did have a couple of handouts available. One is the growth and activity report for the town. I went to all the major, I don't know, I didn't bring enough copies for a group this big, I apologize. But I went to all the major departments and asked for some of their statistics. I started with the town clerk, talk about age demographics. And over the period of from 2010 to 2020 to 2023, there's been some significant changes in our age demographics. Currently, about 50% of our population is over 50, so we're definitely changing, and there's some pretty interesting numbers in there. So I'll let you go through that on your own time. Our fire call volume has increased significantly over the last 10 years. total call volume in 2014 was 1,672. Today, it's 2,781. It's 1,100 calls, so that's about 100 calls a year increase. They currently average 7.8 calls a day, which is an incredible amount of activity. Our police department, in 2015, they averaged just under 1,400 calls a year. Today, they're creeping up on 23,000 calls a year. That's over a 10-year period. That's just incredible. And they do that with 23 officers.
Because really, the population hasn't grown that big. The population does not keep in line with the increase in the calls.
Correct. So what's interesting about that is a few years back, there was a Police Reform Act, and we lost all of our part-time personnel. So this has been solely the full-time people. The Department of Public Works did a 20-year analysis on the road mileage. These are new streets that were constructed over the last 20 years. Almost 12 miles of roadway and 37 detention basins are included with that. Our senior center, and this relates almost directly, well, I should say that the fire department responses also are linked directly to our demographics, our age demographics. But our senior center has gone from 32,865 service count to 46,539. So that's an incredible increase. Our recreation department, their participation has increased over the last 10 years. There's a little bit of a caveat in the first few years because they weren't using the electronic registration system, so the numbers may not be totally accurate, but in 2017 they had 3,602 total participants in their programs. Today they're doing over 5,000. Library, similar story. I think that's gone up considerably, and you can see those numbers there for yourself. So I thought it was a good snapshot of what we've been dealing with, and this goes back to what I said earlier about seeing the congestion in our town buildings and offices. We are certainly on borrowed time. Sooner or later, we're going to have to start bringing staff in to help. What I can say is, in my tenure with the town, we've kept up with this workload through technology. I hope technology can still keep us afloat. When I started with the town, we had one fax machine, and it was in town hall. We'd have to drive across town to use it. We were working on work processes.
The DOS systems.
Yeah, the first computers were DOS, and now everybody has a cell phone, everybody has, instant access to information. If it wasn't for those technological changes, and I'm sure the school department's the same way, we would not be afloat right now. But I do feel that there's gonna be a limit to this. At some point, we are gonna be struggling. I used an analogy the other day with my department heads, and I said, I think we're all drinking out of a fire hose. And if anybody's ever tried it, it's not fun. And we're all very busy. Everybody's working very hard. I can't say enough how hard our employees work and how much I appreciate that. And this shows it. Town hall, I don't think we've added administrative employees in years. We have pretty much the same number of people. I've argued with the town accountant for years about this fact, but she says we've gone backwards, and I said, well, I think we've stayed the same. So, but neither one of us are arguing saying we've grown with personnel in the town hall. So I want to get that on the table, because when we start looking at our budgets and we start looking at where to plug these holes, it's going to be very, very difficult for us. And I'm not going to speak on behalf of Brian, but I'm sure he would say the same thing, that this is not going to be an easy year for us. So I did include some of the raw data from the school department, just so you would have it tonight. It's also included in the information that Jill's going to go over. So the budget request from the schools is in here. Some of their historical data is also included in Chapter 70 information. So Now I will turn it over to the town council.
Well, so before Jill, does anyone on the finance committee have any comments, questions, or anything for Steve with what he's said about this information? No, okay, I just wanted to check. Hey, Jill, your turn.
Hi. So I have the preliminary income and expense summary sheet that I have passed out for you guys, with a little highlight sheet, maybe hopefully if you forget, oh, what did we have for new growth, it's clear, so, you can refer back to it, hopefully it'll make life easier in the long run. If you look at local receipts, line 17, those receipts are expected to be pretty flat. I will continue, or we will continue to watch trends in what's happening in the town and with different revenue streams and additions or subtractions all along the way. So in April, this number is probably going to look different than it looks today. March, it'll look different. You know, we try to keep up with it so that we take advantage of what we can without going too far.
Mm-hmm.
Because going too far means we're in a deficit, for those of you who are not necessarily familiar. Property tax levy on line 18, the 2.5%, Proposition 2.5% is included in this new number, as well as $225,000 in new growth. That also will change along the way, most likely, hopefully for the better. The new growth hopefully will be a little bit better than the 225,000. Yeah.
So we're talking about new growth, that's new home starts, new construction. That has been declining over the last few years. We've seen that drop from over 400,000 to our present level. So that's been an area of concern for us because we don't have the building construction that's eventually becomes taxable to try to keep our revenue stream increasing.
So from there we go to the state aid. So we have state aid. We won't know anything about it until the end of this month when the governor puts out her budget. So I've just utilized the current year's numbers. It's line 19. The current year numbers, in order to just populate that, it could be a little more, it could be a little less, could be a lot either way. So we will have at least a little insight as of the end of the month, and that will change these numbers somewhat. Certified free cash on line 21 is reflected in full. So the full amount of free cash is the $1,743,892. If you look at the back of this packet, you'll see that I added a free cash distribution worksheet. There was an agreement earlier on in the season or in the year that we would utilize 60% of free cash toward the budgets, with the rest split up between one-time capital and reserves of stabilization and OPEB. So that $971,335 one-time capital allocation would be $421,000, and reserves would be a total of $226,000.
Reserves would be
Reserves being
OPEB
stabilization
32.
and OPEB.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay.
That is, the reserve fund will utilize the $125,000 on the top, which is what we did the previous year.
Do we have the breakout between the, what is the turn backs from the unspent funds from last fiscal year opposed to what the revenue growth has been?
I have it. I think I neglected. I knew I was going to say, oh.
Yeah, because that would be really important. Do you have it? Yay!
Second handout. Sorry.
Okay, yay!
I don't know who I am right now.
I was not reading ahead.
I do
Yeah,
want
you're
to
right.
mention that our current balance total of what I'm referring to as reserves is $2,553,926. 2,187,000 of that is stabilization. The rest is OPEB. In total, it's 4.50% of our FY25 budget.
That has been returned?
That
That's
is
unspent?
sitting in stabilization and OPEB.
Okay, never mind, okay. go
You're
ahead.
on, you're
My
still
brain's
thinking
thinking
free
something,
cash,
right.
But I'm talking about the balances and
I get it,
stabilization.
I get it,
of
sorry.
Right now, because that's something that we're, tend to be mindful of, so I.
Right, that's pretty close to 5%, which is a good place to be.
That's the question. So the governor is gonna release the cherry sheet number at the end of January. It still has to go to State House and Senate, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
How historically do we often see that number change a lot?
Yes.
A lot.
A lot subjective.
Yeah,
So
some.
we, last year, the governor always releases the first round budget at the NAA conference in Boston. That's the weekend of January 25th, as I stated earlier. So by early the following week, there will be an announcement made. The House and the Senate will each pass versions of a budget, and then they form a reconciliation committee. There's been years where we haven't seen the final budget released until August. The governor's numbers are generally pretty close to where things land.
Okay.
That doesn't always tell the entire story, because the state gives and the state takes back. There's always offsets. Last year, the estimates that we used for the budget ended up being about $17,000 lower than what we ended up with.
And those are like a 1% increase, like Belchertown gets like a 1% increase every year. It is so ridiculous at how little we get compared to surrounding communities. That's all I got, like, I don't even know how to change that.
We typically follow the governor's budget, and generally the reconciled budget is pretty close to it. Is that accurate?
And is it accurate? They give us nothing as an increase?
Yeah, they give us nothing, that's the bottom line.
It's pretty much static.
Well, not always. We have had some years, we had Chapter 70 one year, a really big chunk. I can't remember how long ago it was. But we do get a little bit more sometimes, but lately, as of the last few years, it's been pretty flat. And sometimes we wind up with a cherry sheet revenue number that looks so great until we see the assessments that come off the top. And then that, oh, it looks so good, and then we're actually losing funds from what we thought. So, we're really in flux. It's gonna be a little bit before we have all of the information, or even close to all of the information that we need to make decisions, but I will carry on.
Jill, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
I know we don't have all the numbers, but the odds of getting great news to hit the numbers that we're asking for, that's not gonna happen. You know.
But this is not, this is not the
It's not gonna happen, Lisa.
This is
Nope.
not the final
Just in case they're
run.
listening.
But we are looking at probably a very difficult,
Yes.
a more difficult year this year than in recent memory. Ambulance receipts, again, that's another one of those numbers that will, vary. It will change along time as we see what the receipts coming in this fiscal year, how that looks. It's really based on kind of trends and what is happening. I don't think there's anything really there. So going into the expenditures, the first thing I want to note is our health insurance is expected to go up 15%, and that number could be higher.
Could it be lower?
Sure.
We are,
Sure.
the HR director and I are working to set up a time to communicate with the Hampshire County Group Trust to try to find out if we can find some areas where we lessen that.
So that still could go either way a little bit.
That's still in the process, yeah. What we know is that any plan changes or any changes in contribution have to be negotiated with the unions.
What 3 unions are up this year? I forget. Or what unions are up this year?
None on the town side.
All on the school.
All on the school. Okay.
And I think
'Cause that's a
last year was
significant-
8%, right?
Closer to 9, I think.
Right, so even if we got 1 or 2% difference, we're still going up,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, 3% for,
We have looked at what some of the other communities are doing, and it does seem like our rates are pretty reasonable compared with even some of the other communities, so, you know, but we are looking at everything right now.
I just wanted to,
If I can just add some color to that, the medical trend for health insurance increase right now is about 13%. So to be at 15% is only a little bit over what trend is right now in Massachusetts. So it sounds about right.
The numbers statewide are anywhere from 10
I'm
to
sorry, we're not
15%.
accepting public
All right.
comment at this meeting. Thank you.
We did have, last year, they did ask for a larger increase, and they backed it down a little bit.
So there is hope.
And we've had some years where it was in the single digits or 0 even. So in hindsight, I wish they had gone up 1 or 2% in those 0 years, so we wouldn't be talking about this today. But like everything else, as soon as I show up, it just it gets more difficult, it seems like.
Sorry. But maybe there's still some hope on that. That's a little bit, not that it's gonna make a big deal. Nothing's gonna be so great that it's gonna have an, big impact on the bottom line. I'm sorry, Jill, go ahead.
To continue on the health insurance, the group insurance trust has been overall very, very good to us. So as much as the 15% feels
Devastating.
a little devastating, they've really been good to us, and they have shared the wealth, so to speak, so that we wouldn't have these big increases over the last decade or two. I guess we're paying the piper now to some degree. So the next thing that is an addition is a $247,500 debt with $44,303 in interest payments for the Jabers Brook Middle School feasibility study.
And
So
this
we
was
took
for the,
a 5-year note out for that study, and the FY26 payment.
and that was the $1 million overall that we're now, I just wanna make sure everybody here understands, so.
Yes, it was a $990,000 fight, and so we took that as a 5-year borrowing, and the amount due is the $247,500, and the interest is expected to be in the $44,000 range. It's not that we're calling it out that it's a problem, but it's just something additional in the budget that is.
That won't be
taking up
next
space,
year.
so to speak.
And it won't be there next year
It
either.
won't be there.
Oh, we'll be there.
Four thousand.
We're just,
Every-
some of the
Plus the
some of the highlights that are affecting this. And that's not something we put in the school budget, that's in the fixed cost.
It's a
That's some
fixed
facts
cost.
rate,
Can I
so,
ask you a question on that? When we did that project, we went to town meeting and said that it would go on, that it was going to taxpayers. Like, we're gonna pay that in the article? Is that not happening?
This is
It wasn't
this is the taxpayers.
But it's
Oh,
not,
I see.
so
For
the school was gonna be in a,
project didn't happen.
No,
but
no.
in the article, and
The-
it may be me not understanding, but I thought that was going to be paid
Outside of the debt limit.
outside the debt, because the warrant was written as,
I double checked the warrant, Brian, and it was
There are
not
two
written that way.
separate articles. There was one for the building. and
yeah,
called
this was the,
990.
this was
Okay.
the 990. And I could be wrong, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I know you asked that question,
Yeah.
so I researched it, and it was not set up as outside of the debt limit. That would have required
It
2
would-
votes,
Yes, it
town
would have
meeting
been,
and a ballot,
right.
so you can have that.
To be outside the debt limit,
Take it out.
it takes a town meeting vote, positive, and it takes a ballot vote in the positive, in order to go outside the tax limit. And we definitely didn't do that. Sorry.
No,
You
I'm
want a
just
copy of
asking.
it?
No, I have a copy, I forgot it in my office.
Just for clarification, how many more years are we paying off this debt?
You said 5 total?
It will be, yeah, so probably it's for 3 or 4 more after this.
So we've made one payment so far.
This is actually our first, so there are 4 more after this.
And is it simple or fixed interest? Meaning, does the interest continue to accrue on the principal amount as simple interest would, like a mortgage, opposed to fixed interest? There's this much interest, and it's divided equally among the 5
No,
years. It's simple. Okay.
I have one more question. Wasn't part of that reimbursed by MSBA, the 990?
I had thought so, but
Sorry, did you say that again, Brian?
I believe part of the 990 was reimbursed by MSBA.
That was only if the whole project passed.
No, that's not true.
That was my understanding.
We can look at
Let's
that.
look at it,
We might
let's
wanna
look
check
at
that
it,
out.
let's look at it, because
that would be great.
with borrowing and so on, it's, I need to look back. So
And if
we'll
that's
talk-
right,
we
I'll
can-
come back and
we
say
can
he's
talk
right.
tomorrow.
but
No,
I
you
rem-
won't.
I-
We never
yes,
do that.
I remember asking specifically if the project didn't pass, and I believe I was told that a portion of that is from MSBA.
Would we have that information for our next meeting?
Sure.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, I just don't have it.
Yeah,
with
and I
me,
could be
and
wrong,
I don't
but-
wanna
Yeah, yeah.
misspeak about it.
Me neither, so.
That would be great if it was.
Yeah. That would be a
I
huge
know,
boon.
I know that amount is going to be due this
Just remember
coming year,
who's saving money yet.
due to the fact that the treasurer who took out the borrowing
Yeah.
have it
Sure,
in
sure,
either sheet.
sure.
So
Gotcha.
that 247 is a definite,
Gotcha, just
Okay.
double check.
but I will. Then we have, also in the numbers as they show on the income and expense, I did include the funding for the firefighters. February 10th is the end of that grant. There are 6 firefighters covered by that grant. We included the rest of the year from February 10th through June 30th in this iteration of the budget.
Do we know that cost separately
It's about $155,000.
with like longevity pay, health insurance, all of that stuff? Is it
Like
included?
fringe and everything?
Everything, so it's 150, roughly 150,000?
But that's
That is
just,
on-
is that just wage, or does that include fringe? Oh, so that does not include the fringe or anything else that would be added to that?
155 plus fringe.
Plus fringe and anything else, longevity, this, that, and the other thing?
Well, the grant was supposed to cover a lot of things, but
There's
that
no
was
longevity
miscommunicated.
added.
Well, at this point, but
I'm sorry, what?
The grant was supposed to cover a lot of things that it didn't, like fire gear and all that. That was mistold to the town. So I wanna make sure have everything, the
Yeah.
numbers separate for that, and not mixed into the budget, so we understand if we're cutting teachers or we're cutting something, we understand what those numbers are.
and can we have the total cost including fringe? Because fringe is a big part of that wage. Like 26%, I think, is your number, Jill, for fringe, and God knows that was before we might have to go up 15% on health insurance.
Right.
The,
So that would add a substantial amount
I
to
would
that
like
number.
to have the opportunity to look at the
Perfect.
exact amount.
So
I
next,
don't
maybe
want-
next meeting, we can revisit that? Because where would the offset of those funds come from on the town side?
Well, right now, it's built into the budget, the town budget.
And so what had to be reduced on the town budget
That's what we
in
don't know
order to
yet.
build that into it?
So we have a differential between what's available on the town side and what's been requested. That request includes,
And is there any
6 firefighters.
reduction in, and these maybe for the next meeting, we would have these questions, the answers to these questions. Has there been any proven reduction to overtime and/or increased revenue that we've realized by having those 6 firefighters, all 6 of them, on the fire department?
yeah.
Because that would be 2 factors that we'd want to have the actual information on to consider.
I would say yes to both.
Okay, that's great.
Because you haven't seen the fire chief in front of you looking for reserve funds for overtime in quite a while.
That's because he goes to you now.
And, but we can ask him to try to do a little recap on that.
Yeah,
But I do
that'd be
believe
great.
it is help.
Just so that we can see, like, if you're cutting something on the town side to fund those 6 firefighter positions, do we or don't we actually need all 6? What's the cost with fringe that we'd have to incur this year from the February to the June date? And how can we substantiate that with looking at, again, decreased overtime wage and fringe and I would include in the decreased overtime, I would include the fringe with that as well to be fair. So if we've decreased overtime by, let's just make it up, $10,000, you know, it would really be 10,000 plus the fringe amount would be the true reduction, so we'd wanna see that to be equitable, and then also the increased receipts.
Yeah.
So maybe the net is not nearly the 100 and whatever we're saying tonight.
Okay, when Gil gets to the bottom of the page, there's about a $560,000
I see it.
need for the town budgets, and that funding for those 6 firefighters is part of that $560,000. So what we're gonna be looking at, and that's what we're doing now, is where can we find the money to cover the 560, not specifically to cover the 6 firefighters, it's everything. And we're gonna prioritize that, so we'll have a lot of opportunity.
I just think it would be, and I'm sure the town would be interested, since that grant is ending and ending mid-year, having that financial information in front of us, just, as constituents and as elected and appointed members of the town government, would be good for us to be able to look at and review and discuss.
Understood.
May I ask a follow-up question?
No.
Okay. You said that the town might have the 560, right? Deficit. You just said about 560.
Deficit from our
Right.
proposed budgets, yes.
But the overall deficit was the 3 million, right? So isn't 30% of that 912?
No, we took the available revenue, and it's been split in the same manner as the budgets.
70-30. So the deficit is 3 million. So 70-30 of that would be that the schools would be 2.1 million and the town would be 912, not 2.4 million and 559,000.
So Jill, is the 9?
So to be clear,
okay.
what we have done is the total amount of revenue, or the total increase in revenue, net of the money going to stabilization and.
Yeah.
Okay, and fixed cost Pathfinder, right, which we don't know the Pathfinder number yet, but we're using last year's number for now. That net is $438,000 that is available over and above last year's budget for schools in town. And that has been split 70-30.
Because of those fixed Pathfinder costs. So the fixed cost, you know how we have the fixed costs, like insurance is paid this way, the buildings and, insurance is paid this way. Are those reduced from the $3 million deficit before the 70-30 split takes place?
I don't understand what you're saying.
So, you know, we have fixed costs. Is
Yes,
that
that's
reduced from,
reduced,
that's, so you
yes.
take the amount that we need total, reduced by the fixed costs, which are, Steve reminded me, like insurance on town buildings, Pathfinder assessment, various other things, I don't know off the top of my head, and then retirement, and then when you get to that number is the number that is split 70-30. Is that correct?
The left, what's left, yes.
What's left is split
So-
70-30, I just wanna,
We have $1,203,000
okay,
in 818, if you wanna know.
Okay.
Dollar, in additional revenue.
okay.
If you look at your income and expense, and it's in one of the far columns. 640,161 is the increase in fixed costs.
Okay. That we have no choice but to pay.
Correct.
Again, some of the stuff I'm saying is just to clarify for people that may be watching, or,
It's actually on the first page of the
Is it?
handout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I'm looking at this, why this looks so funny, I redid it.
I understand this part, but
So if you get to the bottom of the page where it says overall funding summary,
Yeah.
the numbers are there. So we have
okay, right here. Thank you, Steve.
$1,203,000 over last year's spending level. We eliminate or reduce it by the fixed cost.
And OPEB, and the OPEB and stabilization money.
Correct.
And the capital money.
Correct.
At the increases, I'm
Right.
only looking at the differences at this point. I did it both ways, every way, and.
That's the net.
So the net is $438,071 additional available.
Because even out of the fixed costs, some go to the school really, like the Pathfinder, and some go to the town, and some are shared across the
The
board.
insurance for the school building.
Right, the insurance, so some of that,
That's why they're fixed costs, that's why they got.
right, so it's not necessarily that the school gets no benefit of that.
Right.
It's the fixed costs, you have no choice, they're on every
And debt-
balance sheet,
debt's in
debt,
there as
right.
So as of right now, we have $438,000 available for spending that has not been committed over last year. But again, we don't have that governor's number yet, so that may go up, or it may stay the same. So when we look at our budgets and we say the schools are 70% of our spending and the town is 30, we split that $438,000 by that same ratio, and this is what we have available.
Does that make sense, Brian?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Sorry, we're
No,
all
no.
confused.
No, so if you're all confused, so
But so
ask away.
my question is where is the target budget total number coming from? I understand the 70-30 split, but I don't understand what
So-
that 70-30 split is being added to.
It's added to last year's budget.
So the amount that you received last year of $306,649.84 has been added to that amount, resulting in the $33,492,046 number. In the town, the $131,421.36 has been added to last year's allotted revenues and increasing the town departments to $13,314,079. The requests are what you had initially sent Steve, the $35,976,472, and the variance between what we have for the increase and what you have asked in a preliminary request is the $2,484,426, and I just wanna say it out loud. The $2,484,426 has never been money that we have available to us. It is nothing that we've had, it's nothing that we're taking away. It is a number that the school feels that they would need to provide the services that they provide, and I fully understand that. But that being said, the actual funds available, and the only funds available at this time, based on the 70-30 historical split net of fixed expenses, which comes from both the school side and the town side expenses and some shared expenses, leaves us at the $33,492,46 for the schools and $13,314,79 for the town, which is ultimately still gonna leave us where somewhere in the $900 allotted per resident of the town, opposed to a $16,800 revenue for each student we have in the school. So the school's already receiving the majority. I love the schools, you know I do, Brian. But the reality is that the numbers we currently have are all that we have. And I have copies and I can give exact numbers if people want them, but at this table, if they want them, but it was in the annual report last year. There's, towns like $868 per person, give or take, in this, that we get for all town services, all essential services, recreation, everything. And the schools are at about $16,008 per student based on last year's numbers. So I just want everybody to understand the scope of that. And that said, Brian, I think I'm gonna give you guys the opportunity to say whatever you'd like to say. This is a great
I
time
told you
to.
last year, I don't think that's comparing apples to apples.
How would you compare it differently? And it's a legit
I'm not
question.
quite sure, but you don't use police or fire services every day.
I think that we have 7 fire calls a day according to
So
Steve.
not every resident in town uses those services every day.
Well, if they did, the cost would be significantly higher.
No, I understand, I'm
than
just telling you my
that.
opinion, I
Right.
think that's apples to apples. No, that makes sense now. So basically, as of right now, the schools need to cut $2.4 million.
Right, I get it,
From
and
their
it's,
request,
right,
I
I
want to
get
be
it.
clear too. The request that we provided was no new positions. It was completely level service, what we currently have now. There's nothing new. 15% went up for benefits. 96% went up for students that need special education. So there's no new staff, and I just want to be clear on that. That is level service, to continue what we have in FY25 to FY26. That is the cost. I don't have control, nor does anybody in this room, about health insurance, but we have 70% of the employees. I hear about it all the time, So in transportation, we can't do anything about that, but the request that was submitted was to maintain the current services we have. And I want to repeat one time, and then I won't say it again. We cut $1.7 million last year, 15 positions.
Were there 15 positions?
15 positions were eliminated.
So I remember,
Not-
but I do remember Ruby at the first joint meeting we had in this fiscal year a few months ago saying you were able to make those cuts last year without any impacts to programs or services or
Correct.
that, no, you did. You said that on a meeting. It was, there was no impact to programs or services. It was our
No,
first
but
joint
class
meeting.
sizes went up.
But so that
You know,
class
so
sizes
was
went
that-
up, but
was
they
that-
went
There
from.
were classes that were eliminated.
Yeah.
But there was class sizes that went from like 14 to 19
Yeah.
to,
I
they were
agree with you.
negligible.
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, so 2.4 million, it's going to be people. And the question I always ask is, we can do all the studies we want about regionalizing, combining. Where's the plan for revenue in the town? Because if 15% is on health insurance and everybody in the town gets COLAs, are we not even meeting that? So let's just say it's 700,000, I don't know. And we're only bringing in 500,000? How?
You know what, Brian, I completely understand where you're coming from. Yes, we definitely need to make more progress, and I think people are working as hard as we can, and it would be great to have innovative ideas and all kinds of other things to help us bring more business and drive more revenue and do more things. There's, in years past, we've had some revenue opportunities which the town decided they didn't want to pursue, and we lost that revenue. We need to drive business. We need to drive revenue, even with Whitney saying, let's look at the revenue opportunities in the vacant spaces in the building. I 100% agree with you. Couldn't agree more. I do want to reiterate, though, just so that nothing gets different, that the money that you say you need has never been on the table. That money is just not available. So I agree. We need to find ways to bring in more revenue for both the school and the town to be able to offer the services that
It
it
used to be on the
offers.
table, and we came up with a new policy, which I totally support, for capital improvements. But where's the plan to bring back what we had? Because I've been superintendent for 5 years, and I cut every single year. To the
Well, there's
tune
been
of
some-
2.6 million. and
There's been
then-
enrollment that's reduced, there has been reduced enrollment.
Correct.
So that is some of the, I don't know, maybe that could be some of the issue, but I've been serving on the FinCom for years and years, and every year we all struggle to give the most that we possibly can to the schools and the town as equitably as we can to keep the baseline covered, and I've seen cuts on both sides, and it's
I agree,
hard-
that's
yeah.
not my thing, but
Right.
we're getting to the point where these people in the room are gonna leave. They're gonna go somewhere else.
I get it.
And you get a real good return investment with the individuals in this room for what they do in the schools.
I'm sure we
And
do.
I'm sure they do it for the town too, and I'm not saying about the town, I don't want any
Well, it's
firefighters
all
to
of
be
us.
cut.
Right,
It's all of us, but it's just like, okay, 1.7 million last year, 2.4 million this year.
I get it.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Jump in, just to be clear, the town departments, first of all, we're all a town.
100%.
That's the first thing I wanna say.
100%.
Cause it's not us versus them.
No.
It can't be us versus them.
Right, 100%.
We all have to work together. And the us versus them is just, it's just too much.
Mhm.
And it doesn't make sense.
Right.
All the money that comes in covers everything.
And-
Anyway, when you're saying that you're cut every year, I understand what you're saying. Just so that the public understands what you're saying, what we're saying is that we request level service. The town departments, the school department, all of us request level service, right? From
A level service to me isn't new positions.
Well, there's no new positions.
Well, you're picking up the cost of 5 firefighters. 6.
That's an existing service.
It's an
I
existing
understand, but
service.
we're not having the money to do that.
Well, that still remains to be seen. Either way, what it has been requested by the town every year has also been cut.
How
Our
many
budget's
people,
not
how
cut
many
because
people
we're
have
not-
the
we don't have
town lost
less.
in the last 3 years? Staff.
Can I ask a question?
It's
I'm
not-
not-
Can you
I-
answer my
I think we
question,
should
please,
answer that
first? How
question.
many people, how many staff employees,
So-
town employees have been cut?
The bottom line here.
And I know
Brian,
you're
is-
getting frustration,
No, no,
Lisa, but this is the
It's not-
problem.
It's not frustration.
You're just saying it is what it is, and we
No.
have to live, you've said it many a times.
Me?
Yes, we have to live within our means, we have a structural deficit, we need to cut. All I'm asking is how much has the town, the town employees,
It's a
not the
legitimate
schools?
question. It's a legitimate question, so Steve's gonna probably try to do the best he can to answer it.
Well, yeah, there's a couple of ways to answer this, but first and foremost, the indication of budget issues, it doesn't necessarily lie solely with your employees. So cutting positions is not an indication of whether or not we've all suffered through this. We have a 50-page line item budget. You don't know what's in here because we manage our budget, just like we don't know what's in your budget. You manage your budget. We've made different decisions. We've been able, over the years, to reduce expenses wherever we could. Last year, we had a campaign, all of the department heads looked at fees, and we adjusted all of those fees to cover a lot of expenses. We're doing the same thing this year, but I can almost guarantee you this year, we're not gonna come out of this without losing some positions. But because we made different decisions, doesn't mean we didn't suffer the same difficulties that you did. Now, you may have been in a situation where you had no other decisions. We did. And we may still have those decisions. So we're not, what you're asking is a difference in management decisions, not whether
I
or
don't
not.
agree, Steve.
Not whether or not we both suffered. Because last year we cut 2. This year we're cutting a significant amount of money, and we have to somehow make that work.
I understand that, but I guess my question is how many people, and maybe it's not about people. I could list people, services, stuff, and you're absolutely right. We have reduced students in the building, absolutely, I get that. But I can also justify that with mental health issues that occur. I can't hire a guidance counselor for that. So what I have to do, I have to send them out a district and pay for another school.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say management issues when we're cutting $2.4 million and the town is cutting $600, which I know is heavy, but I sat at these meetings where the finance and the select board changed the way we used the free cash, which we've been using for, but I still don't have an answer how we replace that.
Well, some of that free cash that's being used is also actually the majority of the free cash. We're putting the majority back into the budget this year, and a good portion of the remainder is going to capital needs, which will be used for both the school and town capital issues that are one of the reasons we are in this state of disrepair across so many buildings across the entire town, school and town-wide, because we have not allotted money to repair these. We have not had a capital amount Ed Bosher.
Yeah, so this has been a growing issue for a very long time, the capital needs, right? It was to your point, the way it used to work, that was a failed policy. It doesn't work. It will not work for the long term, which is the main reason, and it was backed up by the Division of Local Services saying, hey, here's the best practice. So this is definitely a growing pain. We got to start somewhere, and I'm happy that we're starting down a road. It's painful. There's no doubt about it. But to say that we can ignore the capital needs any longer, that's not right either.
Both the school and the town.
No, I understand that completely.
And I forget who mentioned it, but there are no grants for town buildings. There's not. So
It's difficult. So even if we were to take the $400,000 for capital and split that 70-30, it still doesn't bring us anywhere where we need to be.
No, I know that.
So that's a tough thing. But, I want to say again, just the number of employees reduced is not an indication of the pain that we've all had to go through to get where we are today.
And the schools do have, you need teachers for students, so you are more human capital heavy, then maybe the town can cut things in different areas, programming, reducing things that might not require, offboarding a staff, whereas a school, you really need the human capital or teachers. I don't know.
So far, we've been lucky that we've been able to do that, and I
Right.
don't think this is going to be a lucky year for us.
And I think you guys have done amazing with what you have. You know how much I love the schools. It's
I
just,
understand, and it's
it
I don't
sucks.
blame anybody at this table. I get it, but I need to advocate too.
100%.
And I've asked and asked and asked, and there's no revenue. So we're just going to expect to cut from the next 5 years, and because there's no new revenue. I mean, let's face it, there's no new revenue in Belchertown.
on top of that, Chapter 70 has not been kind to Belchertown. It's only grown by 0.5% for the past bunch of years.
I agree.
Contact your legislators.
And I didn't want to. I'm not going to say it.
What, say
No.
it?
No.
When is it available to change? When are they going to reconsider?
I have no clue.
Could I talk now, or we?
Sure.
What you see as frustration is really actually, I'm just perplexed. I'm perplexed because with other departments, they've looked at creative ways to generate revenue to support their departments. And so what I'm wondering is, what creative ways has the school department looked at how to fund some of the programs or some of the services that you obviously need? There are grant opportunities available, and you may be going after them. If you are, it would be really important to know what they are so we can support those.
Okay, so I
efforts.
presented every budget cycle, what we get in grants and how much. So that's not a surprise to people. You see it every
You do.
month. And the problem is Belchertown is not a low-income town, so we don't qualify for a lot of them. Sean oversees our grants. He probably has numerous grants, and he's always looking for grants.
Yeah, I would just
You
like
know.
to know what you're going after, how we can help you. Because I think part of this is, because this is a partnership, then in good faith, it would be good to see what the school committee and what you are doing to help fund your department. The
Well, I
other
think in
departments
prior
are doing
years,
this.
Brian,
I
I
understand.
get, but in prior years,
can
I just want to say, in
No,
prior
no, no,
years,
no.
Brian has been and the school committee has been very open about listing the grants, talking about the grants, and showing us the
During every
revenue.
budget
That
presentation.
they've always been part of every budget presentation, and they've always been substantial amounts of
What I
money.
appreciate is being able to finish the point.
That's fine, but
Before,
it's fine.
before anyone else speaks.
You can, you're
Um,
free to speak.
The point really is that, I come to the meetings, and what I hear is, what is the town doing? And what I'd like to hear is what the schools are doing, so that we can support those efforts.
So in addition to the grants, which we do present in every budget presentation, what ideas do you have? I mean, do you have suggestions?
I'm looking at the experts that are at that end of the table to tell me.
So I don't really want to go down this road, but I think it's hard when we ask what the plan is for revenue and the town. Because I haven't heard any plan from you in a couple of years, honestly. And I understand it, and it's a work in progress, and this isn't to be combative. We have to work together.
This is actually a
But
curious question.
I have heard from members at this table, all they need to do is combine the schools and regionalize. I have heard it a number of times. Not one person at this table has reached out to me except Nicole about regionalizing and combining school. Steve and I have talked about it, stuff like
You
that.
have refused 2 meetings where we have asked you.
We don't want to get into that
and
in this
school
public.
No, you're making an accusation that's incorrect.
It's not correct. You come to the meeting and you say, you need to do something with JBIS, you should really combine or regionalize.
There was, Steve, put out the invitation so that we could have what I called a blue sky conversation with you, which was not to just say, okay, nature, if we need to do this, or we need to do this, but to look at the blue sky and say, if we were going to think creatively, what is the best way to move forward? And that's something that Nicole, myself, Steve, we're all asking you to be a part of.
Lisa, that's not true.
You have refused. We have the email.
Yeah, because I said, what is the agenda of the meeting? And you had no agenda.
We had one meeting following our school tours that frankly was not very productive. I mean,
If you
we're
don't mind-
open to having a productive meeting with ideas, but I mean, it keeps getting pushed back to us. What's your creative solution? We had a creative solution. It wasn't supported. So we're looking to, what's your creative? I mean, you keep saying we need to work together. We have grants. We have proposals. So
Ruby Bryant, if you don't mind, this is not a productive use of time, this discussion. It's important discussion, and we should continue it. I know Steve's open to whatever, how you guys want to continue the conversation, but something, in my opinion, something definitely needs to be done about JBIS. I don't know what, but that's where these meetings, we got to start over again, so.
I think it goes back to what I said earlier too about getting to the table to start talking about buildings in general and where we are moving. Javers Brook is certainly a hot topic. I know there's MSBA programs out there for roofs, for windows and doors, for HVAC. But until we start talking having some small group meetings and trying to get a path forward, and maybe they're not always going to be productive meetings, and maybe we're not always going to leave smiling. But until we start down that path, we're not gonna make any progress. So I would really like to say, let's get to the table and start talking about this, because unfortunately, whether we're talking about Javers Brook, additional revenue, where we're going with these budgets, there are no short-term answers. We need to start planning now for the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And that's why we have a capital improvement planning committee now, and we're trying to work on these things. So I agree with that. I think our time would be better spent tonight finishing up the budget conversation, and maybe we can get a meeting on the books, and we can start talking about the creative ideas for these buildings.
And there's one thing I'd like to add is I would be hard pressed to think anyone at this table doesn't think Javers Brook is a priority, especially after the building tours we took. Like, I don't think anybody has a quick fix for it, but it certainly, I think we all acknowledge and understand that it's absolutely a priority. Moving on. So who has any comments, questions, anything about the budget conversations from either the town or the school that they'd like to discuss or ask questions to amongst people at the table?
I have a couple. So we talk about revenue. I know I'm sure you probably looked at Mr. Cameron, but like increasing fee use for like the auditorium and stuff. Have you guys looked at that in the school budget and making sure that's happening to like help with somebody rents out the auditorium? Have you increased your fees?
So we increased fees last year. We didn't look at that because we don't have money to maintain it, so it's like the fields. We don't want to rent them out and have people come in and get hurt on them and they're in poor condition and we don't have the money to maintain it.
That was my next question with the fields, because the field is what brings revenue into this town. It helps our small businesses, it helps and this is how the town contributes. instead of looking out for new revenue, we need to start taking care of our folks in town that have the current revenue, our current businesses in towns, our current places. That's what we're losing sight of in this town, is we're not taking care of the people that live in this town. We're looking for people out of the town to come in. We need to take care of the people in this town, and we're not doing that. These small businesses support all these youth programs. If they can't use the fields, we're losing the small businesses, and that's horrible for our small businesses. It's horrible for all these parents around here that go and use these fields, which could bring in revenue for the schools. So I know we've been working with CPA grants and stuff like that, but how much of that budget is field maintenance?
Oh, the town maintains them.
That's my question, like who maintains the fields?
Well, it's a broad answer. I get it, it's an overarching.
That's a hot topic.
Yes, yes.
You know, we're starting to delve into individual management decisions. And I don't think it's fair to the school committee, and I certainly wouldn't want this to be going on to the DPW director or the police chief. The schools have a budget. Jill and I are presenting a budget, and I think we're getting too deep into the weeds with those kinds of questions.
At this time, it doesn't mean we won't revisit them at a later date, during the budget cycle, but just maybe at the first initial meeting, it might be too deep and too specific.
I absolutely agree with you, and I'm not trying to poke the bear. But I think the problem is, when it comes to athletics, everyone gets involved, and the phones keep ringing and ringing and ringing, and do this, do that. And to John's question, we maintain the fields out of operational expenses. There is no separate budget.
Yeah, the school department also pays for a DPW laborer to cover the amount of hours it takes to maintain the field, so they do pay for the field maintenance.
They do? That's interesting, I didn't think so.
That's interesting, and that's when we talk about budget and cutting people, it's like, well, they could cut the 2 DPW workers, I guess, for their budget.
There's only one, and they're just gonna maintain the fields.
And
It's
that
a
would be
double-edged sword, that's what I'm getting at, like, if we don't discuss this or bring this up and start thinking about it, that's where we're at. We're gonna be in this whole budget circle and playing games everywhere else. Go ahead.
I guess to my point, those are management decisions that we need to try to figure out. You know, I don't know if we start down this road, we're gonna be here for months.
Like, listen, I'm leaving for Miami tomorrow, so we
So you
better
don't
be
wanna
done
be here
tonight.
for
No. But anyone, the
Jen
select
wants to
board,
say
everybody?
I mean, I have things to say
Well, you say them.
about the revenue again and the income and the initiatives that we've been working on in the hopes of bringing in revenue, which we know are gonna take time. But we now have paid out of ARPA for a grant manager who will help us come up with a comprehensive strategic way of looking at all grants that are available from every possible source available to the municipality. There are many different grants. There are many different iterations of them. They're not just school related. There could be grants for the fields, for example. There are ways to look at these that are non-traditional, and hopefully this grant manager that we have invested in will help us with that, and how we can, as a collaborative town, meaning rec, conservation, arts and culture, all of our schools, all of the athletics, how all of those components of the town are working together so that we can make some like big moves and get some big partnerships involved in the situation that we're going through right now, which is also part of the reason why we're going through the rebranding and the marketing and the wayfinding, because the perception of our community is not that great. Folks have talked to other folks outside of town, and they might or may not be aware of that. But when you go out and you talk to people, they don't think of Belchertown. My school looks for an auditorium to have their theater program in, and I'm like, they're doing it in Amherst, they're doing it in Northampton. I'm like, have you looked at Belchertown? Have you called to see if our auditorium is available? They don't think of us first. So getting this marketing initiative going, getting our name in the paper for exciting things that are happening in our town and assets that we are improving in our town is going to help. And again, it's not a magic, it's not going to happen overnight, but we are working on creative solutions. So
I had a clarifying question, and then we also had a revenue comment. Just for clarification, Brian, you already touched on this, but the 96% increase in tuition, that's specifically special education needs that have increased in
That
the
is
district?
special education and Pathfinder, not Pathfinder, Smith Voc. So if a student wants to go into a shop that Pathfinder doesn't offer, I have to send them to Smith Voc.
Thank you, it was so substantial, I was curious about that, so I
The,
appreciate that.
yeah, the majority of that is student tuition for out-of-district placement.
Okay, thank you.
That brings me to, so Pathfinder's budget is split between both 70-30, right?
No.
No,
So it's just off the top.
it's off the top.
But all those kids, in general, he's paying for the Smith Voc stuff, wouldn't that be, come off the top then? It's the same thing as going to Pathfinder?
No,
Wouldn't that be the
it's
same
different.
concept,
No,
in the grand scheme of things?
not from an accounting perspective.
From my analogy of looking at it, if I was going to Pathfinder or Smith Voc, it's that same thing at the top. They don't offer it, it would be the same.
And how many students do we have going to Smith Voc?
We got 17 or 18 right now.
And how much is it per student?
I think our budget this year was, it's about 20,000 per student,
Plus transportation.
plus transportation. Yeah, it's like $400,000 out of the budget to send them to Smith Voc.
And can we have a meeting, not necessarily all of us, but is someone, maybe the school department, you all planning to meet with Eric Duda before he has his main presentation and tells us what the costs are gonna be, to let him know of the deficits that we're facing and see how we can work together to minimize any increases to the Pathfinder line? Is that appropriate to do? Is
Sure,
it
I'll reach out.
appropriate to invite
me
him
out
to
to
one
lunch.
of our tri-board meetings? On your own money?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But maybe even invite him, if that would be appropriate. I don't know what anyone else
Doesn't he come
hears.
and present to the town?
No, he doesn't. What he
No,
does
we
is
go
he
there.
invites
Oh,
us
you
to
go
a-
there. Yes,
he
you go
invites us
there.
to a meeting in March, which has every town there,
Right.
and then he tells us what his increases are gonna be.
Oh.
And we have no say whatsoever. So last year, we
Yeah.
knew there was some issue. I don't know how appropriate legal, I don't really know anything about it, but is there a possible way that we could reach out and try to open those lines of communication before those decisions on their end are finalized, to say, listen, we are already looking at this, what can we do to mitigate our costs, make sure that our enrollment numbers are correct, because they were not. There were various data regarding Belchertown that was not correct on last year's presentation, which I believe ended up costing us more money by the time it was identified, because we didn't see it until that meeting. There was no way to go around and change it. Like numbers weren't adding up, so just to make sure that we have all that data, we verified it for accuracy, and that he understands what us and all the other towns that go to Pathfinder are up against this year, and how can they be part of the solution in
Sure.
helping us.
Do we have a board member from Belchertown?
Mhm.
Oh, we
that
do, I forgot
serves?
about that.
And so I wonder
If we can invite them here to one of our tri-board
I
meetings.
think it'd be important too, and maybe we'll do it at our meeting, and you could show up on the formula, because it's not, and I don't want to speak for him, but it's not school-age children. It's the population of students.
I get it, but I do like my data to be, if somebody's presenting me with data, I really do like that to be accurate.
Well, I think according to
I
him, it
do.
was accurate. So-
No, the numbers, the student enrollment numbers, what have you, was all
But it's not
inaccurate.
about enrollment, it's about population.
If you're gonna put data on a paper, I
I
would
just,
like it to be
yes,
accurate.
Lori, whatever you want.
Okay, good answer.
I'll be happy to help you with that.
Yes,
Brian.
yes, I think.
But
that
it
would be
wasn't from
great.
you, it was from them
No, I
providing
understand.
that information.
I also think having a monthly recap of what's going on in those meetings through our representative.
Correct,
be a
that
good
would be
idea.
great, that would be great. I don't know
That way there's no
who,
surprises.
right, cause they've got to be participating. Like, has anyone ever had a monthly recap, or
No,
Jill that you're aware
Our
of, or?
representative is Lori Alves.
Okay.
And I have not heard from her.
Right, because she should be part of that process. Wouldn't they all be part of the process of creating that budget?
So,
I don't know.
believe- I don't know.
I don't
He
either.
does the same thing. He puts together a budget and presents to the board at Pathfinder, and they
Okay.
vote. And if Belchertown was to vote it down, you have to get 6 other communities, so it doesn't pass. because it is a regional school.
Well, I don't think anyone's looking to vote it down. I just think the way that it plays out now is by the time that the, select board, town manager, town accountant, finance committee, school committee finds out,
It's a surprise.
it's a done deal. Every year it's an increase, and so last year, while you were unable to obtain funds that we didn't have to give you to meet what you'd like to do, Pathfinder realized, I believe it was a 4% increase. The finance committee voted down supporting Pathfinder, I can't remember the vote, I think it was either 3 or 4 to, against. And because of that, like, where's this conversation? And that can be a substantial amount of money, if they had a 1% increase instead of a 4% increase, Belchertown's portion of that can be that's a creative way to get money back in play on our end.
I have one more thought, if I may, while the focus is still on you all. Thank you. We do seem to have a childcare shortage in town. And thinking about ways that revenue is flowing out of our town, I'm seeing a lot of families on very long wait lists and taking kids for after-school care into other towns and summer camps. Is this something the schools would ever consider, having after-school care in the schools? It's not going to raise $2.5 million, but maybe it'd be something. And then summer camps.
I just don't have the money.
But it's very expensive. Does it not cover to send a kid to aftercare and summer camp? Does it not cover operational costs and the staff plus more?
You're proposing for a fee, not.
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah, for a fee.
Absolutely.
Oh, for a fee.
I mean, parents pay a ton to send their kids to these things.
We could look into it.
It's not going to raise $2.5 million.
But do you think that's even feasible to look into a program like that?
I think we would have to look at a lot of things, liability, do they have a liability waiver, where they're gonna do it?
Would you be able to take in?
transportation.
Would you be able to take in like part-time, maybe a certain level of certification, not have it be a actual teacher, full-on teacher, because they might be done for the day at the end, and things like that? Like a para-level, like a, para looking
Or
to.
even having high school students as teachers, but there are supervisors.
I know that there's probably regulation.
There might be I'm assuming there might be. I don't know.
I was surprised when I moved in town there wasn't aftercare in the schools.
Well,
that was new for me.
There used to be a
There is
Jabish.
Belchertown Day School.
That's where my kids go.
Yeah. And it used to be in our school.
But it's a
Didn't
private
Jay-
organization that
Yeah.
utilizes school spaces.
Yeah.
I think what she's
Not
referring to
anymore.
is like a in-district, like
Yeah.
where my sister her kids go,
Sure.
they have.
And I don't mean
inventory.
this in a bad way, but,
Do we
yeah,
really
we're gonna
brainstorm
put it on
tonight?
staff
No,
to
but people are
now
talking nicely.
provide after school.
But they'd be paid extra.
And
It's
Brian,
just the
didn't
My
Jabish used to do that?
At the get-go
Didn't
would be
Jabish
like
used to
for
do
the
that?
level of effort required, like what would actually be the the cost-benefit ratio, like, would we really, for the amount of effort it would take to implement something like that, would it really offset the budget?
And it might not, and just having that data though to say this is a
Yeah, no,
non-starter
it's a fair
or
point.
this is something to pursue, maybe we just look at
It'd
it.
be great to have a town center for all,
Wouldn't it be a great idea?
for, you know what, let's do it, all town employees can bring their kids somewhere, and we could be the schools, it could be the police station, not just the schools, we could have a town,
We
learn
can
it
stick,
together.
we can stick all our children in the unused basement areas and say,
That's right, Steve's office.
Teach them how to clear out
I get us
files.
back.
Yeah, we got that.
These are the kinds of things that we should be, again, let's get to the
Right.
table with small working groups to kind of kick some of these things around, because otherwise we're gonna be here for months.
again, and
You're
I'm
gonna
going to
miss your
Miami, I'm going to Miami.
So if you need a surrogate, I'll go for it.
There you
can say
go.
that tonight.
Right.
I'm only meeting if Lori's gonna be there tomorrow.
Right, there you go.
So yes, let's get to the table and we'll vet some of these ideas.
So Steve will put out another invitation, you'll come?
I think we should go to Pathfinder so we can have the culinary.
Sure, well,
Ooh, good idea.
We can kill two birds with one stone. We'll talk to Mr. Duda and we'll
please ask him not to use colored toner on anything that prints as a handout, please.
All right.
When are we gonna
What's on the next
meeting
agenda?
again? When could we meet again?
Yeah, so I don't believe there's any other business. Does everyone feel that they've had an opportunity to ask any questions or comments or concerns about anything the school has said about their budget and the town has said about their budget to date?
Can I just, really quickly,
Yeah.
so everybody has the exact numbers, the school's preliminary request was $35,976,472. They have a variance of $2,484,426.
Between the available revenues and their request at this point.
The town budgets, the requests have come in at $13,873,140. And we have a variance of $559,061.
Between what
Correct.
you got or what is we have available at the 70-30 split.
That is correct. So I wanna make sure everybody got that because we kinda got sidetracked. It is in the handout, so
What was the level service of the town overall?
$13,873,140.
And,
It's on the bottom of the page there.
Bottom of the FY26
and
preliminary.
what increase is that compared to, what was the budget last year?
Oh, percentage-wise?
Or no, what was your total budget?
Last year?
Yeah.
13,182,658.
So the difference is the 131,421 was added to last year's number, bringing it to the 13,314.79.
So you went up about 600,000
No.
from last year to this year?
They went up
The
this
request.
exact.
The request.
No, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry.
yes, the request.
So our budget request is 5.24% over last year's, okay? The schools are 8.41%. So, and that, it is what it is, I'm not criticizing that.
No, I get it.
Those are the numbers. Yep.
I just want to say that we're going to start cutting because we've been doing this long enough that we know that there's not going to be that kind of money that's going to come in. So I'm going to go with that number.
We're doing the same. Billy's planning for it. One of the department heads dubbed it doomsday planning. So we're gonna work through it.
Just remember, I have to do a public hearing on the budget, so I'm under a little different timeline than.
I think the next meeting in February we'll have better numbers.
Well, so in other business, could we switch now to setting maybe 2 or 3 future meetings to come back to the table while we're all here?
No.
No? Or yes? What?
We really need to wait for the governor's budget.
Yeah, we need to wait for more numbers.
Do we? So
That's at
when
the-
do you
that's at the
think the
MMA
next
conference.
meeting should be
7
generally?
Yeah, I think it would be better to have something
When
on
can
the
we give the
calendar.
schools and the town a better number?
Right, and start there.
Not the end perfect number, but a better number.
I mean, we need the governor's budget, that's huge. Pathfinder, the reality is Pathfinder can make or break us.
Right, and so
But
maybe
that's
having a
not till
preliminary.
Mid-March.
So
And
Pathfinder
I
just,
don't think we can wait.
right, appreciate that, Jill. What if Pathfinder only goes up like 1%? Is that gonna change this number drastically?
Well, what is in here now
Yeah.
is level funding.
Okay.
So,
To level funding, meaning if they go up 1%, that lowers the 70-30 split.
Correct.
So who has the authority to reach out to Pathfinder and say, Mr. Duda, can you give us this information?
I can ask him if he has some preliminary information. I think Brian agreed to reach out to him as well, so. Okay, so.
Our representative should be
I
able to
know,
reach out to
we
them.
should reach out to our representative
Right,
as well.
and maybe have them at the meeting as
Yeah.
well, because maybe they could then speak as they're voting in the future too, before they vote to accept or deny. Jill, when does the governor's budget generally come out?
at the end of the month.
The end of January or February?
Weekend of this month.
So could we set a meeting
Put
in,
it out by the 26th, but they didn't make it last year.
Yeah.
but so could we set a meeting in February, to just get it, I mean, we're all super busy at this table, I get it.
14th?
Yes, let's all have a Valentine's, Galentine's, Valentine's.
Are you bringing the flowers?
Yes, I'll bring the
Yes.
flowers.
It's like 4 days.
I'll bring the candy.
Thank you.
Are you going to?
So the regularly
That's a
scheduled,
Friday.
the regularly scheduled finance committee meeting would be on Tuesday, the 18th.
That's break.
we did it at 7, would you be able to make it better?
That school be great.
That's school vacation.
That's school
FYI.
vacation, so,
I would do the 11th.
And
So-
we're supposed to have a select board meeting that night,
okay.
according to our calendar.
Because the holiday is the 17th.
And so,
Holidays is the 7th.
I would love everybody to be able to participate, and I know there's one of us that Tuesdays before 7 PM is just not a good time. So, what date does anybody?
Can you go back a week, the week of the 10th?
That's what John's saying because of the school vacation. So, could we do Wednesday the 12th? Is anybody good for Wednesday the 12th?
Wednesday the 12th?
Wednesday, February 12th.
Yeah.
Pardon?
No, how about Thursday the 13th?
Why?
No,
Because it's not good for you?
Are you in the wrong year? February 12th.
So no, we're now looking at February 13th, Thursday, February 13th. Is it?
I'm out that whole week, but
I got nothing.
Nothing? Perfect. Angela, how about you? Is that good for you?
I think so.
So Thursday the 13th, all in favor of Thursday the 13th on their calendar
Thursday the 13th?
of February, the day before Valentine's Galentine.
Oh, Thursday the 13th.
So we can,
Sorry.
so can you?
Yes.
Anybody that cannot? You cannot, Whitney cannot? Okay, sorry. So other than that, so let's set our next meeting for February 13th
At 6:30?
at 6:30. Because you can do 6:30 on the? Yeah. Okay, perfect. And we will not have the meeting on the 18th for the FinCom's normally scheduled meeting because of school vacation. And really, we all kind of want to meet together anyway. So 6:30, okay, and should we go a meeting later in February, because it's probably gonna be a lot of intense discussion on the 13th, and should we maybe 2 weeks later reconvene? Does anyone think, like, yeah, at the end of February, so if we do the 13th, could we then do the 27th, or the 25th, hold on, Ed. I can do 7 PM on the
Wait, are you
25th
talking the 25th?
of February.
We have a school committee meeting.
Okay, so how about the 26th or 27th?
Those both work for me.
I can't.
You
I'm
can,
on vacation.
are you?
Yeah, going to Florida.
Oh my God, if you're like me, bring your laptop and all your work, and my 24-year-old's got a meeting Monday morning at 9 AM in her hotel room. She's like her mother. Huh?
3 weeks isn't gonna be bad, like the first week.
So if we, we have somebody that's gonna be on vacation, so could we look to, okay, 2 people. So could we look at maybe the first week of March?
No, I'm in Florida. I'm sorry.
Can you remote in?
Can you remote in?
Remote in?
Really?
I have like 3 meetings set up for Miami Beach, like that I'll be taking on my laptop. Yes.
You're gone for 2 weeks in a row.
Right.
Then you better remote.
Yes.
I'm kidding.
So we have 2 out on vacation on the 27th, and so if we can
I can
do,
do the 26th. Do we say no to the 26th?
who else is not available on the 26th? Steve, what'd you say?
Are you out, Nicole?
Can I remote in from that?
From a cruise?
Sure. No, the
I would
cruise,
not
not
do
unless,
that.
not unless you buy the package. Do you buy the Wi-Fi package? Did you buy the Wi-Fi package? There you go, you can remote in.
What's wrong with the 27th?
I don't think anything yet.
That's Thursday the 27th.
Yeah, like I'm gonna be on a beach in Miami, not moving, on a ship. You're gonna be, are you gonna be in Miami?
So we're talking about the 26th?
27th.
Oh, I'm in
27th
SoFi.
or the 26th, I just don't know what.
So
it
does
says.
can anybody do the 27th
Seven.
Thursday at 7 PM?
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
yes, okay, fine.
I can't.
Can't you remote in? Okay, fine,
All right,
whatever,
all
take
right,
your vacation. Okay, perfect. This is from somebody who brings her laptop and work on vacation with her.
All right.
Excuse me,
right,
Marguerite.
7 PM.
7 PM on the
Marguerite,
25th,
You're making a lot of news here.
7 PM.
You're making a lot of news here.
Nothing starts till 8 o'clock anyway, Lisa.
Your motion to adjourn?
Hold on, we're setting that meeting, 7.
Maybe we make a request for a larger room for our next
Wait,
meeting in case
You
we
said
have an
7? It starts at 7?
So 7 PM on the 27th.
Mhm.
I don't know why, but I heard that. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect.
What time were we on the 13th?
The 13th is 6:30.
Wait, what did you ask?
May we have a larger room for the
Oh,
next
larger
meeting in
rooms.
case- I love that there's
The audio
engagement.
visual.
No,
Yeah,
we
larger
can,
space.
we can try to see if there's one available. Steve Williams will let us know.
And the audio visual.
Yes, and could we please have Kevin Hannon in attendance, for both meetings?
Doesn't say audio visual person on my forehead.
So I
Meeting I'm in.
motion to adjourn the finance committee.
I have one more
Oh,
thing.
no, hold on, never mind.
At the next meeting, can you allow public comment for a little bit, like limited to 3 minutes or so? Is that possible, or at least by one of these meetings? just give a little-
I think maybe the second meeting, not next next meeting's gonna be still too preliminary, but last
Sure.
year, at a meeting prior to the town meeting finalization, we did allow for like a 15-20 minute, open comment. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I was just
So,
wanna make sure so people aren't here.
but to have pardon?
Yeah.
Well, I understand that, but we have to have actual
And at first I
numbers.
thought it was a 12th, and then I heard it again. So.
Okay, so.
They were all over.
Maybe the end of, February. We can probably make that determination on the meeting, the first meeting in February, whether we have enough to actually accurately answer any
What's
questions.
gonna change? I keep hearing
Nothing.
we're gonna get these numbers and we're gonna have this big debate.
The governor's
The
budget.
governor's budget's gonna change. That's it, Brian.
That's not gonna change much.
Nope.
I'm hoping I'll start to have some impact reports.
Yeah.
And the questions would be limited to relevant information to what we are discussing on the agenda. It would not allow for public commentary on opinion on the agenda. If someone were to have public opinion and commentary on the agenda, they would not be heard. They would not be allowed to continue. It's just for relevant, it would just be solely for relevant questions about what we're discussing and, what we have to deal with. The town has elected the select board and the school committee, and the moderator has appointed the finance committee, and so in order to effectively do our jobs, we've been entrusted to do that. And so while I have not been opposed in the past to having time for public comment, I know the last time I did that, there were a few people that got up and were just really giving opinions for long periods of time that, really had nothing other than it was their opinion. So,
I have a question about that.
okay,
I totally understand what you're saying,
okay.
but there was no, we have public comment every meeting.
I know you do.
So we wait until March, April to allow people to speak, and it's too late.
Well, so with us, the money is finite.
But I think
it's
people want to
established.
be heard.
I 100%, which is why I agreed to it last year. I was absolutely, well, it wasn't even on the agenda. I made an exception under something else that was on there to have it heard. I even allowed people who were upset to speak. I was quite frankly upset last year that there were educators speaking and telling me and acknowledging that they were having classrooms during academic time lobbying, writing letters to lobby our boards in support of like budget issues, and then just going on and on. That was so inappropriate. I'm surprised I honestly didn't report that particular educator to DESI for doing that.
That's civic government. I mean,
To sit. So I'm gonna go down this road. So when we have open comment opportunity, and I don't think anyone at this table is opposed to it, people need to be conscious that it will be to speak to the questions that are being discussed, not to having a forum to have an opinion about the state of the town, the state of the money, the state of the resources, what coulda, shoulda, woulda. It would be relevant questions that the people at this table with the information that we have at hand can answer.
so where does the other occur?
The other herds, well, school committee.
Right.
If somebody has a concern about the school committee and how they're allotting the funds they are given, then their venue to be heard for that would be at school committee, because the town has no say whatsoever in the funds allotted to the school committee. All we do as a town, and I mean school committee, town, everybody, all of us, it's not us and them, never has, should never be. But the money that we have available, the tangible, actual realized money that we have available is distributed in a way that we have been doing over the last decade. And I understand that that's also kept everybody teetering on the edge of disaster for all sides, almost every year. And so it is not within this tri-board's purview to determine how we should recommend that you spend the money that's allotted to the schools. If somebody has a question about how the town is spending their money, they should write to the select board and ask to be put on the agenda to be heard and have that discussion.
Just a quick question. So is your intention, so like we have public comment and it's just that, it's comment. We don't respond, it's not a discussion, it's just comment. Is your intention to answer questions or
So
to take
there's not gonna
comments?
be a public comment because making a comment during these meetings, it's not really relevant. So the school committee would be the forum for people to make comment on school-related funding and issues. The select board meetings would be the opportunity for people to comment on any questions they have on how the town maybe is planning to or is expending funds in certain ways. The finance committee, what we do as an advisory board is we are all solid financial professionals with many, many years of high-level financial expertise. We look at all the budgets, we look at all the numbers, we go through them, we talk about them thoroughly, we then vote on whether or not we believe that is good for the town. And then at town meeting, we act as an advisory committee to the constituents where we get up and say, finance committee at a regularly scheduled meeting, we read the warrant article, we voted blank, blank, blank in favor of or against this particular article, because our real purview is to just look at the raw data and determine if it's sustainable, if we feel it benefits the town as a whole, regardless of whether it's school or town funding, and then give our professional recommendations with our collective financial backgrounds. We don't have any say, really, in any of the other. So our meetings, we are collecting information with the schools and the town to help us fully understand what they're doing so that we can then use that to make our recommendations to the town at town meeting. Love the participation, love people here hearing about this, love it. Would love half the town here.
And I completely understand everything you're saying. I don't see how it's different personally. If it's, we have subcommittees that are always open committee meetings if we don't get much attendance, but if we did, we
Wouldn't it
always
be
have
wonderful?
public comment
Right.
on the agenda. So with all due respect, I just have a difference in
I would
opinion. I don't
rather-
see why it wouldn't be open.
I would allow
simply
for public
comment,
questions.
for people to come and have their voices heard the same way that every board.
I think everyone
has
should
their
have their
voices.
voices heard in the appropriate forum.
Can I just also add, everyone in this room has heard this information and know that the Chapter 70 funding formula is broken.
Right.
So please also take this opportunity to approach your legislators
100%.
and talk to them about this issue. And we will be having in an upcoming select board meeting, the legislators for our community will be in this room. Feel free to
100%.
come.
That would be amazing if the legislators, when they're in this room, that we see this kind of participation and that it's noted on the select board agenda that there will be an opportunity to have, public commentary. That is a great, so
When is
that's a
that?
great place to have that happen.
Okay.
But that's
So
a great
keep-
place.
Keep your eyes open for.
But Chapter
when that
70 is
will
only a
schedule.
piece of it.
I get it, Brian. It's definitely a piece of it,
I know,
but
but it's just,
But it would still be a great place for people to come.
it would be an
Absolutely.
amazing place.
I understand, but I just think that's a piece of it.
So again, we'll have questions. If somebody has a question about what happened on this line item of the budget, how come this money's being spent here? How come we didn't allocate money here? And those types of questions, collectively, this table should be able to answer those types of questions specifically as a tri-board, as we're all three boards are sitting here. But commentary or just stating opinion isn't really gonna be productive with this group of people.
Any final comments from the select board? Very good.
Finance?
To adjourn?
Oh my God, you beat me to it.
All in favor?
All right, final comments from finance?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Finance is adjourned at what time? We adjourned at 8.